Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Boujee Astrology, and we are going to take a look at the major astrological transits of January 2025. I hope everybody had a great new year. If you slept because you don't like to do it, then great. If you went out, great. If you had a good time, you can see what I did. For those that are watching the video version, decided to go ahead and like mix up all my dark colored pinks and do one more round of like this bright pink. Oh, it won't stay this way for long. It's going to be one of those things that, again, I just needed to get through some of the colors that I had lingering so that way I could just, have it out of the way. But it's also like a great representation of, again, something that we'll be dealing with in our life over these first 2 weeks of January that we just need to get a few things out of the way. Got a few things we still got to wrap up. We have a few things that are lingering from 2024 that we can't fully progress until we file that paperwork, until we do that report, until we go into that meeting, until we settle that negotiation, until we do the final signatures, the final things of whatever we were trying to do at the end of the year. So I like to be a good visual representation right now. Oh, there are some lingering things. And the first 12 days of January speak to the wrapping up of the lingering things from the prior year. Some of the reasons that we're wrapping it up going into January is because the final decision, the final situation, the final acceptance of what we needed to do next wasn't finally agreed upon until the end of December. However, simultaneously, we are still picking up on the new. We're wrapping up the first phase of an obstacle course. And that's something I've been saying for quite a while. The last few months of 2024 felt like one part of an obstacle course. This obstacle course is not going to be completely done until we get into April. The first part, I kept referring to it as like we're in the monkey bars, but partway through the monkey bars, we started getting hit by paintballs. And that was because Mars and Mercury both went retrograde, not in that order, but both was necessary. Mercury's retrograde was necessary for us to be able to see and understand another side and what needs to change to make that function better, what needs to change for certain aspects and certain people to finally heal from certain situations, what needed to be done differently. It was a necessary change of opinion based off of Mercury. We know we can't trust certain people the same way anymore. We know we don't believe in certain things the same way anymore. We don't see eye to eye. And that's can be easily overcome in a relationship. It's like, well, you have your thing, I have my thing. That doesn't mean that I love you any less. We just do some things separate. But when it has come to bigger things like businesses, when it's come to legal matters, it's a whole different ball game. And we've had so much that speaks to, again, trying to overcome past situations. Now, a part of the first 2 weeks of January, there will be a lingering effect. There will be a few more people that finally finish their part of that obstacle course. And then we're going to start to get into the next one. And for some people, January and February are going to feel like one of two things. We're either in a three-legged race with someone that we did not anticipate with, we drew the last straw, or it's going to be like a potato sack race, trying to pick up on what's left to finally move forward, but we can't stride forward. We're kind of hopping along, not necessarily fully on a clear path. We're going to go this way and bounce this way, and oh no. And if you turn your head, or if you miss jump, or you turn your hands the wrong way, something is going to trip you. There can be a tumble, there can be a fall, and for a few, there will even be face planting. Face planting is a big part of where we're going to see some things happen in January. And part of that has to do with the fact that Mars retrograde is going to go back into Cancer. He's going back into this other area of the sky. Whenever it comes to Mars's retrograde, I've covered this already. Like, I did a meditative rant video on this, and I specifically said the vibration between Mars retrograde in Cancer versus Mars retrograde in Leo is two different vibrations. And I felt the Mars in Leo could have gains. It could. Disruptive gains, yes, but gains. But once Mars retrogrades back into Cancer, what's also going to happen simultaneously is the North Node is going to leave Aries. Mars will no longer be hosting the North Node. Therefore, the variant that speaks to the potential of gains is not there anymore. Can we still have a pattern of gains? Absolutely. Are we still going to be in a pattern of disruption? Absolutely. And I want to remind everybody about what I was saying back last year, specifically between September and October. If you did not have control of your emotions back then, what I specifically said was, how the hell are you going to handle the first part of next year? Hi, we're here. We're here. So when Mars retrogrades back into Cancer, one, some of the things that we dealt with from that timeline, some of the decisions from then will feed into what we start to do now. And that also speaks to, again, one part of an obstacle course leading into the next, finding our placement, finding how things are going to go. But in addition to that, there will be some unearthing. There will be some emotional responses that do not match the situation. There will also be the uncovering of huge levels of emotional manipulation. That's Mars in Cancer in its earliest placement. That's something that it has to work through. That's quite literally a lesson, a karmic lesson of that placement. But then there's also going to be the other levels of disruption. And I don't want to recap everything that I said in the last that Mars meditative rant video. What I'll do is I'm going to link that in the description so people can go back and specifically listen to that chapter, because it's heavy. There's a heaviness, an emotional weighted heaviness going into parts of January, strictly based off of Mars. But not everything's about Mars. And if you look at the rest of the sky, a lot of planets are in a forward motion. By the end of the month, Uranus will turn direct. By the end of the month, Jupiter will be stationing to turn direct. So we do still have retrogrades there, but their retrogrades don't feel so heavy. And honestly, with Jupiter going into stationing by the end of the month, not completely turning direct, that's going to be in February. But by hosting the North Node, the turnaround of Jupiter is going to have a whole different level of focus and gains. In addition to that, we also have to pay attention to another planet that's going to be going into Jupiter's sign, and she will be there all month. That would be Venus. And I'm really torn this time around with Venus in Pisces. Venus is in her exaltation in Pisces. She exudes feeling luxurious and just feeling sensual, and she will over romanticize things. But it's going to be very easy to over romanticize something, knowing that Mars is retrograde on the other side. There's going to be an influx of people not being able to hold their emotions in. In some ways, it's going to have a negative impact because of Mars and Cancer. In other ways, it's going to have a very different impact. I don't want to say positive. It might feel good at the time, but I don't necessarily want to say positive. I just don't feel like it's something else. And I do have a big hesitancy about Venus and Pisces this time. And I want people to be very aware of what they are agreeing to, what they are launching, what they are starting to unfold, unveil going into the first part of January, especially based off of Venus's entry into Pisces. I want Venus and her exaltation to go well. But I know by the end of the month, by the end of January, she's going to go into shadow. And whenever I meditate on Venus and Pisces and Venus going into her shadow, and then the upcoming Venus retrograde that's going to start March 1st, and half of that retrograde is going to be in Pisces. The things we are starting to deal with and focus on in January, the new for some people will be a surprise, for some people will be a long time coming, will have pros and cons, and will have levels to be able to reach where it needs to get. Now, that isn't completely clear, and I know this. And whenever it comes to people and Venus specifically, if Venus is your chart ruler, if Venus is your time lord, in your individual consultations, we've had conversations about Venus. And now I'm going to put this out on the podcast. And when I want to focus now with Venus, I want to focus on the medical astrology for just a little bit. Venus in her exaltation, I can say this about any planet. Anytime I've seen a planet in its exaltation, especially like in a natal chart, that planet exalted feels like everything should be easy. And in a lot of ways, it is easy for them. It's easy for things to come to them. It's easy for things to fall into place. It's easy for things to feel good. However, if you have that as a natal placement, if something doesn't come easily, a lot of people are quick to throw their hands in the air. Now, in some ways, that's because they give up too fast. In other ways, it's because they feel like they don't have to work for things at all. And I don't really like that. And there will be some people that literally exude that type of energy whenever it comes to their personalities in January. Oh, this is too hard. I don't want to do it. Oh, that's like a whole extra amount of work that I didn't think I was going to have to do. Oh, I didn't think I had to show up every day. Like, I didn't think that I had to. That level of entitlement. There's a laziness to it. But now, again, I want to put a focus on the medical astrology. Venus and Mars both have rulership of sexual organs. Mars in its detriment, and not its detriment, in his fall in Cancer. So not quite the bottom levels of hell, but like he's in the Arizona desert. He's in the Sahara desert dealing with all of the heat, but not actually like fiery pits of doom and gloom. There we go. That would be a good way to look at it. But Venus in her exaltation, if things don't go easy, then it's not going to go well. But if we look at the medical astrology and we go again to that sexual organ aspect, or any of the organs that she rules. So not just your sexual organs, but I'm also going to talk about your kidneys. I'm talking about your bladder. I'm talking about like your way of taking in food. So, and also anything tied to thyroid and stuff like that. If the diet is too hard, we're going to give up. It's too much work. I don't like it. It's not giving me pleasure. I'm not going to stick to it. And I'm not saying that you can't stick to a diet. I actually am saying it more along the lines of people are going to struggle if it's not easy. And you're not just entitled to things being easy. You need to work for it. But now again, I want to focus on the medical astrology and I want to focus on like those organs. One of the things I keep picking up on is that this particular Venus retrograde is going to have a huge impact on people's bodies, especially the thyroid, anything tied to this throat area. For some people, it will be lungs. I don't pick up on lungs nearly as much. I think I will once Mercury is involved, because Mercury will go retrograde on top of Venus, and that's a whole different conversation that we'll deal with in the springtime. But for some people, it will be lungs and lung related issues. But I've picked up on a lot of people kidney, and it's so weird to me how often I'll talk to somebody in their individual consultation. I'll be like, okay, so if you're having issues here, I think that you should go to the doctor, get a lab scan, and I want you to pay attention to this, 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 and this. And then they'll call me back going, so there's an issue. It's like, oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. What I talk about next is not medical advice. Obviously, I'm not in a position to give you like a diagnosis of something. I want you to be aware so you can take the corrective action and do whatever's necessary with your medical professionals, to be absolutely clear. There is something about this upcoming Venus retrograde that I have a lot of nervousness around people's kidneys. Thyroid, like I said, but kidneys. So for what I say for the rest of this part of the example, I'm going to stay focused on just the word kidney. But I mean everything that Venus rules, just to be clear. If you are doing everything as normal, and then something doesn't start to work right, another way to look at an exalted planet is calling it entitled. And entitled people tend to be very lazy, but so too can an organ. Organs can be lazy, air quotations. Organs can struggle. Don't need air quotations. That's a real thing. Their functions can decrease. Their capabilities can decrease. And that's one of the things that I'm nervous about whenever it comes to Venus in Pisces. Pisces is water. It's fluid. Water flows. But if something is not working correctly, or we have like a deep pooled cave, or we have some kind of obstruction, water doesn't flow the way that it's supposed to. And that's where my nerves kick in. I only bring up the medical astrology when I feel like it's going to be something that plays into like big things. This spring, for a lot of people, the effects of Venus's retrograde following the Mars retrograde is going to have a big impact on people's healths. I really do see that, and I feel it. Now, the result of that will vary individually for everyone. Again, Venus rules any way that you take in pleasure. So like your nostril smells food, it's a pleasure. Your throat, your thyroid, all of this. Venus has co-rulership of the lungs, the kidneys, and some of your sexual organs. This is the main focus here. Now, another way that this can come through is you can go out and have a sexual experience with the wrong person because you got a little lazy. It just felt so easy, right? And that can result in, I don't know, babies. That can result in STDs. That can result in an issue of some sort. Be aware of that too. Sometimes if it's too easy, there can be an unintended consequence that you did not prepare for. So I'm kind of bridging away from now the medical astrology and putting more focus into where we're going next. The split has left opportunity. The breaking apart has left room for healing. And as we wrap up some of the dwindling, unfinished little businesses of 2024 in the first few weeks of the year, our focus is going to start to move into another direction. And for some of us, that means we're tied to a person that we were not anticipating. So saying again, for some people, it's going to feel like a three-legged race. For some people, it's going to be picking up on what you can, trying to control as much as you can, knowing that there's going to be some things that trip you up, knowing that some things are not going to be as easy as you desire. And there will be a lot of emotional responses. Some of it is going to be necessary to heal. Some of it is going to be things that shake you to your core. And I need people to be prepared for all of that. Some things will feel easy, but easy can come with a price. And if there's something in your health that is bothering you, you're going to the bathroom a little bit more frequently, you're having a hard time breathing, you feel like something's, not functioning correctly, go get your labs pulled. I'm serious. Because you can get ahead of something before it becomes a detrimental situation. If there's one thing that I like using the astrology for, it's that. That's quite literally how I've kept my mom alive for 2 years longer than the doctor said that she would be. And I'll be very proud to say that. Her doctor actually has said that too. Okay. Moving along. We're going to get into the actual charts. We're going to start looking at the astrology. We're going to look at the dates. So first things first, how are we starting the month? January 2nd. I got it at 9:35 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is when Venus goes into Pisces. That's why I was so heavy on it in the beginning, guys. Like, this is how we start the month. This is how we're going to be dealing with a bunch of things. Venus going into Pisces. So right here, what's interesting is right around the time Venus goes into Pisces, we have the Mars-Pluto opposition that's nearly complete, and I'll put a little bit more focus on that whenever it's exact on January 3rd. But I thought it was really interesting that Venus's arrival into Pisces has Mercury in a quincunx to Uranus. In other words, they don't see eye to eye. They're in an in conjunction. I'm looking this way, you're looking this way. Like, it's just not working the same. The same thing can be said about the Sun and Jupiter. What I'm paying attention to is Jupiter is now hosting Venus. Uranus is being hosted by that Venus, and the moon will actually be going through a square with Uranus. The evening of January 2nd, for a lot of people, it's going to be very busy. We're going to be finding out some things that we don't know about, we didn't know about before. We're going to be hearing some disruption. And again, this is still even part of that Mars-Pluto opposition. So some people are going to be hearing that I had to make, let's go with an example of like, I had to make a last minute hire. You didn't even consult me. You didn't tell me about it. You didn't let me know what was going on. You didn't say anything to me. I had to make a decision. I had to make a gut check decision. I had to move in the moment. It wasn't planned. Now, over this time frame, the sun is actually going into a sextile with Saturn. That's actually not exact until the 4th, but it's in a building of the energy. What I'm looking at is the moon in Saturn sign, Pluto and Saturn, the sun and Saturn. Pluto's not necessarily, Pluto's in a part of this opposition to Mars, but he's not playing into the Venus aspect. What I'm more looking at is we're at the start of some things while also wrapping up some other things. And part of what we're wrapping up is we're trying to get some final agreements done. And again, not seeing eye to eye, not able to reach some final agreements, or whatever we do agree on can't actually get worked out. And are we all going to learn that in the moment? Not necessarily. I think it's going to take a few days for that to like really feed in and make sense. But I do expect a lot of disruption. Now, moving this along, we're going to get into the 3rd. And this is whenever Mars and Pluto will hit their exact opposition. It goes exact like right around midnight. So for some people, it's a part of January 6th energy. For a lot more people, it's going to be a part of January 3rd. And this has a lot of needless frustration to it. And the last few days of 2024 going into 2025, there was a lot of that lingering energy of like needless frustration and people acting out of character for no reason at all. And what I've also seen a pattern of in this particular part of the Mars retrograde is like needless acts of violence. And I know that sounds weird, but I have seen an influx of like people driving into physical buildings, driving into the gas station, the restaurants, crowds of people. It's crazy to say that, but needless actions and having to be held accountable for them. Like there's absolutely no reason to do this level of violence, this level of frustration, to act out in this way. And I do feel like there's going to be some element of that that speaks to this. But in another way, it feels like Mars is not able to commit. Mars retrograde. And knowing he's going to have to go back and focus on something from the past. And Pluto, though, being direct, full steam ahead. So this speaks to, again, another layer of the separation of going in different directions. And some people feeling like, I can't commit. I can't continue. I won't continue. I've got to go do something else. I got to go back in this direction. I got to go over here, think about this. I got to do this in a different way. And Mars and Pluto speak to that. This is not just January 3rd, though. This is a vibration that we've been in for a very long time. And some people, again, are going to have to say, I can't commit. I can't pay it. I can't do this thing. I can't take this action to somebody that's in a position of power. And again, the sun is in that sextile to Saturn. Saturn, Jupiter square is still very, very active. Mars and Pluto. And the thing about Mars and Pluto here is that for some people, what we committed to was months ago, specifically November 3rd, because that's the last time that we had a Mars-Pluto opposition. We had every, plan, every desire to go forward in a certain direction. And maybe we've contributed to that. But at the end of the day, what's come around full circle is, yeah, I can't do it. I can't commit. I want to, but I can't. Now, for some people, this is going to be a very frustrating energy. For other people, it's going to be something that triggers, again, unresolved emotions based off of the fact that Mars is heading back to Cancer. Okay. Now, the Mars-Pluto opposition's energy, we started feeling this around December 24th. It will continue to be a part of the vibration all the way until January 11th. So what I keep saying, the first 2 weeks of January speak to us having to wrap up some of that unfinished stuff from last year. This is one of the biggest reasons as to why. One of, not the only. So we're going to keep going. Okay. January 4th, I'm going to just bump this by day now. This is whenever we go through the Sun-Saturn sextile. I even covered this on the weekly episode. This is not heavy energy, but I think it's interesting, again, that the Sun and Saturn are going to reach their sextile. Saturn is still in that square to Jupiter, and the Sun has gone through a quincunx to Jupiter. So for a lot of people, we're giving direction. The first few days of January, we're giving direction to someone who's going to be responsible for something now, to somebody that has assumed a role, to the person that is focused on the elder, because sometimes it has to do with the family elder, knowing that that other person, either we don't know who they are, like this is the best way for you to handle this situation, but you're not a part of the situation. You're just giving guidance. You're just giving direction. You're just letting them know, like, this is the final few things that you can do to wrap up the situation. That type of thing. You're giving guidance into a situation that either you're not a part of, or because this is dissolving, you don't see eye to eye with the person, not the person you're giving advice to, or not the person that's giving you advice. Like, you guys are fine, but there's the other entity that's either not connected, not a part of the situation, not able to commit in the way that we previously thought. Okay. Now, January 6th, bumping this 2 days, this is whenever Mars is going to go back into Cancer. So I got this January 6th, 5:35 a.m. Central Standard Time, Mars newly in Cancer. You can see that right here. As soon as Mars goes into its entry of Cancer, what I think is interesting is Mercury is going to hit a square to Neptune. Now, Mercury is still in Jupiter's sign. Neptune, of course, is in its own sign, but it's also in Jupiter's sign. So a lot of this energy can speak to somebody coming back around, Mars retrograde back into Cancer. And whatever they come back with is like super confusing. They have an idea that doesn't make sense. It's not very clear, or they're coming back with some extra information that doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel true. The thing about Neptune's vibration is that sometimes we can be questioning a story. We can be questioning the truth, the effects, questioning about how something has affected a certain person. And whatever conversation about the effects, so to speak, with Mercury square to Neptune here, can bring up old emotional wounds, old emotional responses. And by getting that information, having that conversation, having this new part of the form, letting you know for sure, oh, here is the proof that that was a lie. By getting that extra part, it lets you know how you're going to shift your focus. It brings something else into the equation. It brings something else into focus. Now, are we immediately acting upon it? Not really. But I do feel like it's very interesting that as soon as Mars goes back into Cancer, Mars is in mutual reception with the moon. The moon is in Aries. It's in Mars's sign. Mars is in the moon's sign. So some of the actions and the reactions that are coming through, for some people, it's going to be based off learning something we did not know before, telling someone our plan now that they didn't know before, or even one extra one, reacting to a lie. The thing about Neptune is it's not always clear. It's not always honest. Sometimes there is a level of fraud whenever it comes to Neptune's vibrations. And some things here can speak to reacting to something that does not feel true. Not saying that it's not true. For some people, it will be true. It really kind of comes down to your individual situations. Okay. Moving along. January 8th. Mercury is going to go into Capricorn. So you can see this right here. Mercury's at 0 degrees, 3 minutes of Capricorn. Now, one of the things I started to say at the beginning of November is that we're going to have a certain conversation that we're moving in a direction. We're getting something started. And for some people, whatever we start to do in the beginning of November, some things will stick, some things will not. If they stuck, they've been based off of Mercury. If they haven't, they've been based off of Mars. The things that we started to do in the beginning of November that were meant to stick, that were related to Mercury, would have some shakeup, some things that needed to be resolved and restructured and redone through the Mercury retrograde. But all in all, they would fall into place and finally move forward because Mercury ultimately will turn direct and go into Capricorn like he just did. But whenever it came to Mars and the things that didn't stick, there's some going back to the drawing board. There's some things that, again, need to get taken care of. There's some people that are going to be acting out of character from an emotional standpoint. So again, emotional responses that do not match the vibration. Feeling slighted, feeling hurt, feeling frustrated based off of Mars's vibration back in Cancer. By the time we get to January 8th, we know what is sticking and how we're going to move forward from here. We know what we're taking forward, hop along in the sack race, but we also know what we're not carrying forward, who we're not moving forward with. And it is set, it is understood by this time in January. Okay, moving along. Okay. January 8th, Mercury goes into Capricorn. And for a couple of days, just for a couple of days, we're just like wrapping some things up. We're wrapping things up, we're moving things along. There is a buildup in the energy, there is going to be some excitement in the energy, there is a shift in the focus, and then we're going to get to January 12th. We got two things going on right here. One, Mars is in its second trine to Neptune. Now, why do I say that? Because when Mars was in shadow back in October, there was a Mars Neptune trine, and it was the most exact on Halloween. Mars trine Neptune. We had an inspiration. We were told something that was feeding into the action we were taking forward. We had some type of imagery that gave us inspiration of how we were going to go forward. But now Mars is coming back in that trine to Neptune going, I don't even know how I got to this point. Some people are going to be coming back knowing that we had an idea before, and now we need to build on it because the layered aspect of that. But what's also interesting about the 12th is this is the day the nodes change signs. The North Node goes into Pisces, the South Node goes into Virgo, January 12th. So right as Mars and Neptune are coming back into their trine, the last one again, October 31st, the third and final one tied to this vibration will be April 19th. There will be something about this date that again speaks back to late October, early November, and also feeds into where we'll be wrapping some things up in April. So there's layers to this concept. There's more than one thing going on, and there's a sequence in the vibration of how we're charging ahead. Now, the nodes changing signs indicates the next 18-month cycle. This is going to be a little bit different. And this is why I keep saying like the first 2 weeks, like literally by around January 12th, that's why I was saying that before. We're going to be aware of what we're wrapping up and how we're shifting our focus. And this is the shift of focus. And once the North Node leaves Aries, we don't really have gains tied to Mars anymore. So Mars in Cancer is completely emotional disruption. Bringing up old wounds, bringing up some old things from the past, dealing with things tied to mothers and matrons, shaking up things in regards to homes and families. There's a shakeup with Mars and Cancer, and there's layers to that conversation. And again, I will link that Meditative Rant video for the Mars retrograde that I did back at the beginning of December in the comments, or in the description, sorry. Now, when the nodes change signs, the North Node is now the head of the dragon in Jupiter sign. I wish to have, gain, control. Gimme, I'm a great baby. The Jupiterian things. Hope, prosperity, abundance. What is Jupiter in Gemini represented for you? Because the next few months of wrapping up Jupiter in Gemini will have huge amounts of gains based off of North Node. Now, the South Node is again the body of the dragon that must be purged, released, removed, let go of. The South Node going into Mercury sign, some of the old ideas, the old rules, the old guidelines, the old methodology is going to go away. South Node in Mercury sign, South Node in Virgo. So there's certain concepts that are going to fall away, certain old rules and ideologies. And a lot more of the focus is going to be on Jupiter, faith, abundance, prosperity, and this area of need and focus. This is starting an 18-month cycle. And a lot of what's starting to happen in this 18-month cycle, again, we started to work towards it, back in September when we had that out of sign eclipse in Pisces, letting us know there's something that we wanted that we weren't ready for. Well, now we're trying to get ready for it. Now we're trying to move towards that. Now we're trying to get that. For some people, it will be easy. Venus is in Pisces. For some people, if it's not easy, there's going to be emotional disruption. But there's a lot of focus in regards to the Pisces element of the chart now that the North Node is here. Okay. Moving this along. So this is all like an instigative energy. We will feel a difference in the vibration, especially once we get to this 12th, 13th, and 14th, based off of the way everything is continuing. Now, speaking of the 13th, the sun is going to go through a trine with Uranus, and we are also going to have the full moon in Cancer. So I'm bumping the screen to actually get to the actual full moon time frame. All right, we're close to it right here. So I've got this January 13th, 3:35 p.m. Central Standard Time. The sun in the overnight hours of the 12th to the 13th goes through a trine with Uranus. And then later in the day on the 13th, we actually have those full moon in Cancer. This is a full moon while Mars is still in its trine to Neptune. This is a full moon that's very loosely conjunct that Mars. It's not exact. They're about about 3.5, 4 degrees away from each other. Math is hard for me for whatever reason right now. And this is still a full moon in a trine sextile to that Uranus. There is something very exciting, very unexpected, very disruptive. Mars is here. About a past situation coming back to light. Now, why do I say that? Neptune has a nostalgic vibe. There's a lot of nostalgia around Neptune. But Mars has been in this area of the sky before. Mars is trying to Neptune. It's happened before. Uranus is retrograde in an area of the sky where he's been before. Jupiter is in an area of the sky where he's been before. And now Jupiter's hosting that North Node. So we're paying attention to Jupiter a little bit more. And also, while this is going on, Venus is building its square to Jupiter. This is actually going to go exact on the 14th. But there's a lot of things that speak to something coming to light unexpectedly, having an unexpected situation from the past come through that for a lot of people is very emotionally disruptive. The past comes back to haunt. The past comes back to bite us in the ass. The past comes back to show you something else you did not know before, to react or take an action that we did not take before, based off of what has come to light, what has come to the surface, and where we are now. This is going to be a very, very intense full moon for a lot of people. Sorry, cardinal signs, just sorry. It is what it is. All right. The next day on January 14th, this is whenever Venus is going to hit her square to Jupiter. There will only be one of these. I'm not necessarily worried about that. What I am looking at is when Venus in Jupiter's sign hitting a square to Jupiter, they are moving towards each other. So there's something very accepted, something that is not completely foreign to the Jupiter side of things, because Venus is in Jupiter's sign. It's like a hidden benefit for some people based off of what was emotionally shooken up, or the additional support to overcome something that can feed into a lot of things. But there is something here that also still speaks to a long time coming, as well as the hope, the protection, the necessity of certain things. Now, whenever it comes to the medical astrology, this is Venus in the square to Jupiter. So this can have to do with the doctor, the guru, the teacher. And if we're having an issue, this is going to be a hellacious day to actually be at the doctor's office. Just being transparent about that. Okay. On January 15th, this is whenever the sun is going to go through its exact opposition to Mars, which that means we're at the midpoint of the retrograde, but we're not at the midpoint of Mars in Cancer. So that's kind of like a double-edged sword right there. Mars's retrograde will go all the way to 17 degrees. So it's a midpoint of the retrograde, but not the midpoint of Mars in Cancer. So there will be some things that whenever they're coming to light and coming to a head, and for a lot of people, the Sun Mars opposition will speak back to whatever got erupted in the full moon in Cancer, because it's just a few days before this. And it's putting something into focus. It's showing something that is disruptive. It's holding a certain level of accountability. The sun in Saturn sign has a certain authoritative action there. Even though the sun does not do well in Saturn signs, it's still a matter of he is being hosted by Saturn. So there's an authoritative quality here being pushed upon, and person, masculine energy, Mars here. This is all very masculine, of results, foresight, insight, judgment in some ways. But there is something very disruptive that is very likely to come to light around these few days, especially whenever the sun hits the opposition to Mars. And there's a lot of frustration that will result from this opposition because, again, this is the middle of the Mars retrograde, but it is not the midpoint of Mars in Cancer. So this level of accountability, this level of revealing, is going to have a whole different wave of effect that comes from it that most people would not anticipate. Okay. The other thing about Sun in the opposition to Mars is that Mercury will also be going through a quincunx to Jupiter, so not seeing eye to eye. Jupiter is now at the 11-degree mark, so he's starting to station. This is the degree that he will be at for the next month because he'll turn direct at 11 degrees. So by what gets revealed, even if you didn't know it, even if you didn't know the thing that was coming through, even if you weren't anticipating it, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be your focus. It doesn't mean that it's not something that's going to fall on your plate. There's many things that fall onto people's plate during this time. Okay. Oh, the complexities of January. Moving along, we're getting into the 17th. On the 17th, 5 a.m. roundabouts, the sun is going to go through a sextile with Neptune. We're just past it. I've got it still at 3:35 in the afternoon. So I got the sun 28 degrees, 1 minute. Here's Neptune 27:36. The sextiles with Neptune can still bring certain things to light. This one feels like it's setting a future intention, though. It's like letting somebody know something that we didn't know. But there's so much other things that speak to like the necessity of a certain amount of clarity in this moment that it feels like it has like a trickled effect. So I want to be clear, whenever it comes to the 17th through the 21st, these kind of feel like they're connected just based off of like how things are going to progress from here. The moon is actually in Mercury's sign. It's going through this opposition to Venus and Saturn. Like they're about to hit their conjunction. So it feels like there's still just like this trickled effect energy of like one thing after another, of knowledge. Again, a change of plans, a change of opinion, and dealing with the result of so many things that have just come into focus, have just come into light, literally since like the Sun Mars opposition. And that was the 15th. So we feel like we're in a continuous flow and a continuous energy in the pattern. Okay, moving along. Sun sextile to Neptune by itself, not a super heavy energy. Whenever we get to the 18th, we have a little bit more going on. One, this is the sun at 29 degrees of Capricorn, so become very aware that something is coming to a close, something is coming to an ending. Simultaneous to that, Venus is going to hit its conjunction to Saturn. Now, for some people, this is going to feel like emotional responsibility. Again, if something isn't going easy or if it's felt so easy that we've become complacent. This right here feels like a shock to the system whenever Venus hits that conjunction to Saturn of like, if you don't straighten up, young lady, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to lose your job. You won't have something to do anymore. Oh, and I want to be very clear. Venus in Pisces, yes, she is exalted, but sometimes it can feel complacent that we don't have to try as hard. And when Venus hits that conjunction to Saturn, there can be a lot of people getting a level of judgment, again, having a level of accountability. And knowing that the sun in Saturn sign is at that 29-degree mark, some people will not like the accountability here. Now, what's interesting about the sun and Saturn is this is their first conjunction of 3. The next ones are going to come in April 7th and April 24th. So even though Venus is not in shadow here, some of the connections, some of the meetings, some of the conversations that are going to be had are again laying groundwork for how she's going to progress and how she's going to continue. And this can be a very important conversation, a very important set of directions, a very important agreement that is meant to stick based off of the placement of Venus and Saturn. What I think is interesting also is like during the same time frame, Mercury is going through a sextile to Venus. Mercury's in Saturn sign. Mercury is going through a sextile with Saturn. So there's more than one person involved. There's more than one situation involved. There's incoming information in the vibration. There's news in the vibration. There's information, communication, topics. There's flow and incoming parts that are feeding into this and also feeding into how things are going to go from here. So whenever it comes to this part of the vibration and this part of the energy, this meeting is going to be a very important one. And whatever starts to come from this meeting is going to have a level of revealing that for some people it's going to be huge. For other people, it's going to be very, very triggering in the days ahead. Now, Venus's conjunction to Saturn again, it's the most exact on the 18th. Mercury's sextile and how he enters the mix is more exact on the overnight hours of the 19th. And the other thing that happens on the 19th is that the sun is going to go into Aquarius. So we are very aware that we are ending something while moving into something else, while transitioning our focus into something else. And that transition of focus can make us have to face a certain level of fear, a certain level of trauma, a certain level of frustration that's coming to light. I'm going to bump this 2 days. We're going to get to the 21st. And the reason I'm bumping it 2 days is because that's whenever it is the most exact. When I show this to you on the screen, it's January 21st at 3:35 p.m. It's in the overnight hours that the sun and Pluto are actually a little bit more exact, but it is exact on the 21st. And that's why I'm showing you by date. The sun hits that conjunction to Pluto. Now, whenever it comes to the sun and Pluto, I think back to how January of 2024 went compared to January of 2025. The sun and Pluto hit their conjunction at 29 degrees last time, and then they moved into Aquarius together. That vibration was showing us something we had to stop doing, something that we had to shift in our responsibility to prepare us for the Pluto and Aquarius vibration. We had to face something, let something go, let something end so something new could come through. This next conjunction of Sun and Pluto, knowing that they moved into a sign together last time, now we need to reflect on what has changed for us over the last year. And for some people, again, this is going to be about facing a fear, Sun conjunct Pluto, seeing the transformation, Sun conjunct Pluto, figuring out the trigger, the trauma, facing something that is hugely emotionally disruptive, But the awareness, Sun, Pluto in Aquarius, is teaching us something that has a lasting effect, has a long-term effect. Sun conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. And some people will be very stuck and stubborn in their vibration. Other people are going to be very head buddy and wanting to charge head first into some things. Some will be making a very lasting decision that is over a year in the making. The recognition of power and power struggles and power dynamics in this vibration shifts so much. And our awareness of what that shift is huge right here. And I feel like a lot of where we've been over the days leading up to this has forced something to come to light. And I do feel like there's a heaviness to this part of January. There's something triggering, there's something frustrating, there's just a heaviness in this vibration. And it's going to take a day or two to switch gears. All right, we're going to move this to January 23rd. And we have a lot of little things that are happening on January 23rd. And I feel like there can be the next round of something that actually goes back to the full moon in Cancer. But I also feel like that this is going to be like that shift in our mindset, a final awareness, a final outcome, a final decision that got initiated back in that full moon in Cancer. So we got a couple things going on here. Mercury is going to go through the opposition to Mars. Mars is in the trine. I'm sorry, not trine. Mars is in the sextile to Uranus. Mercury is in the trine to Uranus. Adding an extra layer to that, the moon's involved too. The moon actually goes through the trine to Mars, the sextile to Mercury, and the opposition to Uranus. So there's a lot of little things at play right here. And one person's decision about a previous event, about a previous disruption, about a previous action is now leading into how we can move forward from here, how we progress from here. There's an outcome in this vibration, and this outcome speaks to what we start to charge ahead with next. There's going to be a lot of tension around this day. There is going to be a lot of arguments around this day. And the amount of emotional exposure about recent events or previous events being discussed, being relived, is going to be a very intense situation. Once it's done, it's like once the conversation's done, I think it's fine. I think once the outcome is there, we feel better. We feel more hopeful. We feel vindicated. But there is like an outcome, a disruptive outcome in this vibration that's going to hit a lot of people. Some people are going to be fine with the outcome. Other people are going to have the negative impact. Be prepared for both. Okay. Moving along. We're going to get to January 25th. On January 25th, we're going to have Venus's first trine to Mars. So, 25th, here's Venus, 22 degrees, 20 minutes. Here is Mars, 22 degrees, 27 minutes. So we're right before like this first one's going to hit. Whenever it comes to Venus's trine with Mars, this again has a numerous event. It's going to have multiple hits. The next one is going to be April 6th. The final one will be May 22nd. So some of the recent disruption, some of the recent verdicts, some of the recent situations leading into something being emotionally understood right here. Some of us are going to be leaning into certain people emotionally, trying to get their help, trying to get their input, trying to get guidance in some way. There's a lot of sexual energy here. There's a lot of emotional healing energy here. There's a lot of just like pulling people in a magnetism effort together in this vibration. And a lot of people are going to start to forget rule number 3, going back to October. In this vibration, it's going to be a very hard struggle to say no to certain desires. And it's in your benefit to say no, but a lot of people are going to forget. Okay. Oh, again, Venus is trying to Mars. This is the first one. So whatever starts to erupt in this moment, whatever is coming through in this moment, this is new. It's feeding off of what just happened. It's a part of the current obstacle course, but its topics, its situation, its result is new for a lot of people. January 26th, Mercury is going to go through its sextile to Neptune. That's not super heavy. But what I thought was interesting is Mercury will go through a sextile to Neptune while Venus is going through a sextile to Uranus. And there's so much that speaks to like little bit of unexpected conversations, little bits of unexpected vibration, little bits of news that we weren't necessarily anticipating. We're going to have some unexpected decisions. And the thing about these unexpected decisions is that this is right around the time that Venus goes into shadow. Mercury is going to enter, Mercury is going to enter Aquarius on January 27th. So I don't want to skip that. But right as Mercury is going into Aquarius, so you can see this here, that is literally Venus at 24 degrees. So it feels like these little bits of conversations, this little newness that starts to come through between January 23rd, January 25th, January 26th and 27th, going into the 28th. Like this all feels very, very intertwined of setting the stage for that new element, where our new focus is going to be, what we're going to be trying to build, what we're going to be trying to overcome. There's a lot of new right here. And a lot of the new, again, is based off of results of something that has already occurred, that's already been a part of the vibration. But there's a hopefulness to it. There's certain amounts of desires that are a part of it. And there is just some element here that speaks to trying to shift our luck, making a cognitive, aware effort to shift our luck. And not everybody is going to understand that until you're in this situation. It's like, I bet if we try this, we can make it work. We can make something happen. Be aware of the conversations that you're starting to have in this last part of January, because in some way we will be coming back to them in April, not February, not March, April. So be aware of the decisions we're starting to make here. And most likely those decisions are based off of that level of accountability, the reactions, the action that has been taken from the prior events that have led to this. And in some ways that's going to be heavy for some people. In other ways, it's going to be really, really good. It really kind of comes down to like how this has been impacting you. All right, moving along. January 29th, we're going to get Mercury's conjunction to Pluto. And then we also have our new moon in Aquarius. So bumping this by hour to get to where I want it to be, that's fine. Okay, so Mercury's conjunction to Pluto, knowing it's like the last planet to hit a conjunction to Pluto, and it's the one that's shortly after the sun's conjunction, there's some kind of communication based off of what's already occurred. There's some extra element about something else. There's some potentially outcome, news, communication, a rule, a verdict based off of prior events that's coming to light, coming to surface, that is speaking into relevance. And whatever is coming into effect is something that has a long-term effect. Why do I say that? Because this is a new moon in Aquarius, a new moon in a fixed sign. So we have Mercury's conjunction to Pluto in addition to the new moon in Aquarius. We have an intention to shift our luck with the goal that it's going to be something that sticks for a long period of time. Now, We got one more date to look at, and this is going to be January 30th. And a lot of people, I want you to be aware of like the vibration of how you feel like you're turning something around. I don't want to take anything away from the turnaround, but what I think is interesting is that right as the sun starts to enter its exact trine to Jupiter. So I've got this here on the screen. Um, January 30th, 10:35 a.m. Here's the sun, 11 degrees, 2 minutes. Here is Jupiter, 11 degrees, 18 minutes. And right as this starts to perfect, Uranus turns direct. He actually turned direct at 10:23 a.m. So I got it at 10:35. The exact sun Jupiter trine is going to go exact around 5 p.m. And these are the last little bits of the transits whenever it comes to January. So what it feels like here is by committing with the sun's trine to Jupiter to turn our luck around. And sun trine Jupiter is a luck vibration. It is a luck element. And there's a lot of intellectual energy based off of the sun hitting a trine to Jupiter from another air sign. You need it to be an air sign, but there's a lot of awareness of logic behind the turnaround. And once we commit to that level of turnaround, once we commit to how we're going to be shifting our luck from here, to how we're going to start focusing on the North Node in Pisces gains, because Jupiter in that trine to the sun is now hosting the North Node. It's hosting Saturn, Neptune, Venus, the North Node. It's a lot of energy. This is how I turn my luck around. This is how I get things going from here. With an entire cognitive effort that we're going to be trying to set something into a new routine, into a new normal in February. We've got to focus here. This is how we turn our luck around. And there's a reason that we need to get to the point of cognitive effort, logical effort to turning our luck around by the end of the month. It's because we had so much at the beginning of the month that spoke to unfinished business, some things getting resolved. Then in the middle of the month, we also had these results of just past situations coming back around. For some people, that's okay. We've done all the work. So we need that next phase of something to come back around because that was the plan. But for other people, it's not going to be the plan. And there's going to be disruption. And there's going to be something that disrupts the plan that you've tried to launch before, you were trying to do before. And if you have disruptions, if you have that level of accountability against you, then it's going to take time to come up with a new idea, to come up with something else, to redirect your focus, to redirect your energy. And the redirection is going to be something that has layers to it. Whenever it comes to Venus's vibration in Pisces, there's a lot of new with her. But when it comes to a lot of the other planets, there's not so much newness. Mars is going back over an area of the sky he's already been. Jupiter is going in an area of the sky he's already been. Uranus already been here. Saturn already been here. Neptune already been here. So for a lot of us, we are trying to pick back up and carry something forward in a way that we did not anticipate a year ago. And we're finally pulling for something to come together, pulling for something to go into a new vibration. And for us to get to this point, there's a lot of work to be had. Some people will think all of that work is going to go very, very easy. It's just going to fall into place. And we're just over romanticizing the whole thing. I'm going to launch it and then everybody's going to buy my new app, my new thing, my new product. They're just going to do it. It's just going to happen naturally. Forgetting that you got to market. If you build it, they will come does not always work. Some people don't realize that you built something. They need a sign. They need the marketing. They need the other part of the business. They need something to flow. And therefore, there's going to be the need to create new luck. Invest in something that's going to have a turnaround later. For some people, whenever it comes to the medical astrology and Venus, if you're starting to feel like a sluggishness and you can't progress, again, go to the doctor, get some things checked out. And there is some parts of the transits that speaks to a focus, again, on the doctor, the guru, the teacher, because the North Node is going to come into Jupiter's sign while Jupiter is stationing to turn direct. Jupiter will be hosting that North Node for a very long time. But what we'll also start to deal with is if you do the work up front, you make the plans up front and you do what's necessary up front, things will be easy later on. It's just a matter of getting to that point, getting to that place. We got to try. Do the work. If you are doing the work, then the result, yes, it will be easy. It's like it will just fall into place. But don't become complacent because that will bite you in the ass. I'm telling you. Just because something is easy doesn't mean that you should be complacent. You need to do the work. And there will be some things from past situations that are going to come back around. For some people, it's just going to be like, oh, crap, we totally screwed this up. I got to refile it. I got to rewrite it. I got to rework it. I got to change part of my plan. That's not a bad thing. But for other people, what starts to come back around is literally going to bite them in the ass. It's going to be something super frustrating, and it's going to derail what they had been working on. And by the time we get to the end of the month, you're going to know which way you are, which part of that you are. Are you leaning into Mars or are you leaning into the other side? For some people, you don't even know that you're leaning into Mars until the disruption hits. But there will be disruption, as well as a lot of new. We got to deal with some of the old while new. We have to carry forward in the new direction while still carrying the weight of some old things. And some of those old things are going to trip us up. Whether it's just derailing us for a day and we have to cry it out, that's fine. Or whether it's derailing us from a point that it's literally going to pivot our life in a different direction, that can be terrifying depending on the situation. And every situation will be different. But there will be some very big bumps in the road, and this set of obstacles this month is not the same as where we've been and what we've been doing for the last 2 months. They're connected, but they're not the same. Okay. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.